And we see Jupiter rising. Oh, cool, Mr. Larson. There better be more, right? There's more. I'm already messing with you, though, because there are actually two things here. Can you see the two objects there? Let me take you to another screen so I can enlarge it without messing this screen up. I'm just going to zoom in. And as I zoom in, you'll find that there are two objects there. This is Jupiter. The smaller object is a star. It has a name. It's called Regulus. That's the same word root as our word regal. The Babylonians called Regulus Sharu, which means king. The Romans called Regulus Rex, which means king. This is the king star. We now have the king planet and the king star coming into very close approach. So I'm out there on the deck and I'm typing away and I find this and I'm thinking, well, that's pretty cool. I mean, I can see king there.
Well, that was interesting. It was. That was a conjunction. It was interesting. But it also made me suspicious, because, like I say, I'm a lawyer and I'm not an astronomer and I didn't want to be fooled. I don't want to find something that turns out to not have any significance at all. Maybe that happens every Thursday, So I started running the universe backwards and forwards, just trying to find out how often do these conjunctions happen.
Here's the situation. Let's just make some assumptions to put this in context for you. I don't know how old any of the Magi were, but let's just make some assumptions. Let's say you have to be an apprentice to become a magus. Let's say that you make the grade by age 20 or something. Then you got maybe 50 years until your eyes go bad and you can't observe anymore. So let's say they had 50-year careers. And let's put them in mid-career, just making some assumptions here. If that was the case, and if they were watching, weather permitting, if they were watching, they might have seen something like this 2 or 3 times before. So somewhat rare, somewhat interesting. Yeah, make a note of it. That's what they were into. But probably wouldn't send them to Jerusalem. Probably not. But of course, there's more. Now, I'd already told you that wandering stars move about in the field of fixed stars, right? But they don't do it correctly. Just so you know, the planets misbehave. Let me show you what they do. Here's what it looks like. Here's what Mars looks like as it moves through the fixed stars. It moves along like you'd expect it to, but then it slows down and loops. Continues on a ways and loops again. Well, what's with that, Mars? That's pretty weird, isn't it? Okay. I mean, it's looping through the sky like that. That's exactly what it looks like, but of course it's optical. It's what astronomers call retrograde motion. Retrograde motion.
It's caused by the fact that we're watching from a moving platform. Just like when you are driving your car and you pass somebody on the roadway, they appear to drop back. They're not really going backwards. You're just watching from a moving platform. Same thing. We're watching from Earth. And so when Earth spins past another planet in its orbit, the planet may appear to act strangely, move backwards, retrograde motion. And Jupiter does that, of course.
Jupiter's retrograde is very shallow, if I can get my star to go on. Jupiter goes like this. It slows up. It doesn't blink like that. And does a very shallow little circle. Kind of a little like that. Yeah, it kind of looks like a halo over somebody. So did Jupiter do that at an interesting time? Well, yes, it did. Let's take a look. I'll animate Jupiter and let it drop a tail so you can watch it. Jupiter passed Regulus, changed its mind, stopped and went back for a second close approach. That's 2. Passed Regulus again, changed its mind, and came back for a third close approach. Triple conjunction, much more rare, much more rare. And if you choose to see it, Jupiter has just drawn a halo or a crown over the king planet. Interesting. I can see king there, can't you? I can see king, right? Some people would say, well, king, new king, or maybe it means birth. I don't know. I can't get much more out of that, but I do see king there. Very true. A lot of stuff still missing, though. I mean, I don't see the Jewish nation up there anyplace. So, of course, there's more. Next, I want to ask you a question. 12 Jewish tribes. One produces Messiah. Which one? Anybody know? You're right. Say it louder. It's Judah. That's right. What's the animal symbol for the tribe of Judah? That's correct. Okay, good. Let me take you to the first book of the Bible. Look at Genesis 49 for a prediction of the coming Messiah. We read, "You're a lion's cub, O Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down. Like a lioness, who dares rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he comes to whom the scepter belongs, and the obedience of the nations is his." I need a prop. I'm going to use this for a prop. Y'all know what a scepter is? The thing that kings hold to show that they're kings, right? I want you to remember the scepter because it's going to show up again. Okay, so this is a prediction of Messiah coming in his role as King of Kings. Well, that association with the Lion of Judah, that helps us. Let's go back to the sky. If we look at the sky and turn on the constellations, we'll see that Jupiter has been crowning Regulus right here in the constellation Leo the Lion. Well, now I can see an association with the Jewish nation. I can see King in Leo. Well, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. But there's something even bigger that I got to show you that really spooked me when I saw it. And to do that, I'm going to take you back to the Bible, to the last book of the Bible. We've just been in the first book of the Bible. Now we're in the last book of the Bible, Revelation. And I want to talk a little bit about Revelation first and about its author, because I want to make sure you're all on the same page. It was written by a man named John. He wrote 5 books of the New Testament, including the Gospel. He wrote Revelation when he was an old man. And under dire circumstances. The guy was on the island Patmos, basically locked up for his Christian beliefs. And he was there, most commentators think, for 6 to 9 months, and basically solitary on a rocky island. And he was old at that point, maybe probably in his 80s, maybe almost, could it even be 90s? And that's when he wrote the book of Revelation. Now all of you who've read it, you know it speaks in a swirling prophetic imagery, and it's a lot of it seems metaphorical. Sometimes it's not chronological. It's a difficult book. It's a difficult book to interpret. But I can't explain most of it. I can, though, explain a little. I'm going to go to Revelation 12 and show you a corner that I think I understand. Let's take a look and see what John describes. He says, a great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven. What is the sign? Well, I want you to watch this. It's a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet, a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his heads. If you understand this, please email me, okay? His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that he might devour her child the moment it was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. Hey, here's that scepter again. Who's the child? That's Jesus in his role as King of Kings. We saw the prediction in Genesis, and here in Revelation he appears again, and he's got that scepter because he's now the King of Kings. So, if the child is Jesus, who's the woman? Yeah, that's pretty easy. Okay. And in metaphorical terms, who's the dragon that waited at the foot of the woman to devour the child? That's Herod. The dragon is Herod. John elsewhere tells us in Revelation that the dragon is Satan, but we know in human terms it was Herod. So we now understand what he's describing is the birth of Jesus, but he sees it in the heavens. I'm going to show you something now that definitely got all the little hairs up on the back of my neck and the back of my arm. And because what follows Jupiter into the sky as we animate the sky is Virgo, the Virgin. And she's clothed in the sun. And she has the moon at her feet. It's just a crescent moon, a very small crescent, barely visible moon. There's a reason for that. This is Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. The sheer weight of symbolism in the sky on this day blew me away.
In September of 3 BC, when Jupiter is coming in close conjunction with Regulus, the king planet and the king star, that happening in Leo, the lion representing the nation of Judah, the tribe of Judah, that rises in the sky, and behind it rises Virgo, the Virgin, and she's clothed in the sun, and she has the moon at her feet. It's exactly what John described in Revelation 12. It's what he saw in his vision. It's obvious. That got me. When I went on the time forward and saw that rise and realized, oh my goodness, that's what John saw. There it is. That really let all the hairs come up.
So I'm looking at all this stuff happening, and everything's just, really moving me. And I'm thinking, man, this may be the birth of Jesus. And then I thought, wait a minute, maybe not. Because Jewish people and a lot of Christian people believe that life begins at conception. So I thought to myself, well, maybe this is the conception of Jesus. Maybe this is the Annunciation, when Gabriel appeared to Mary, and she said, be it done unto me. Well, you can test that. I thought, well, let's just wind forward 9 months and see if there's anything interesting happening in the sky. So that's what I did. So let's jump forward 9 months. Now, we're still viewing from Babylon because I don't think they've left yet. It's now 2 BC. It's June. It's 9 months later. Jupiter has finished crowning Regulus in Leo and is now moving backwards through the constellations like it always does. I'm going to not the sunset because I need the sky to be darker. You can see it setting in the west, of course, like everything does because of the rotation of the Earth. Incidentally, if you're in Babylon and you're looking west, what are you looking toward? Israel. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something that you can see in any planetarium around the world. Even if they don't believe in Jesus or the Bible or anything, they're going to show you this at Christmas. Because all planetaria do Christmas shows. That's the only way they can get you in there, right? And they always show this event because this event is simply so spectacular. Whether they believe in God or not, they're going to show you this shot. I'm going to kind of cheat as I show it to you, though, because observation back then was all naked eye observation. They had no lenses. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to zoom in because I want to show you guys. I'm going to take you in on the secret of what's happening here. They couldn't zoom, but we can. So I'm going to zoom in, way in. Until finally I get those two objects separated. One of them's Jupiter. The other one's another planet. You're going to tell me which one, too. Men are from Mars. Women are from Venus. That's the mother planet. Venus is the mother planet. So we have Jupiter, the king planet, and Venus, the mother planet, coming into very close conjunction. That seems kind of pregnant, doesn't it? In fact, they got even closer than that. Let me wind time forward just a little bit. What I'm trying to show you is that they really stacked like a figure eight. So they didn't block each other's light. They added. What you had then was two stars stacked on top of each other, too close together to separate with the naked eye. And so to an observer, it appeared to be the brightest star anyone alive had ever seen. We know the math, and so I can tell you that no one alive had ever seen a star that bright. That was it. I believe the Star of Bethlehem was the brightest star. So we've seen the birth of a king in the sky. We've seen the brightest star. But now we have the issue of it being in the south. Remember when they were traveling from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, the star is said to have been before them, ahead of them. So it would have to be in the southern sky. So let's go back to the sky, see if Jupiter did that. They've now traveled to Jerusalem. It's November. I've given them some time for travel. This is south. Remember, Bethlehem is due south of Jerusalem. And then 7 in the morning, sure enough, there in the sky, in the southern sky, is Jupiter over the little town of Bethlehem. Now the hard part, though. Can a star stop? How can a star stop?
That was a puzzler. Because we all know stars can't stop. I mean, physics and inertia prevent that. So our puzzle was hard. I worried about that one until I realized that I had the problem upside down. I had it backwards. The problem is not that stars can't stop. The problem is that all stars are always stopped. I mean, they move like the hour hand on your watch. You can't see it. You know it's moving, but you can see them move. Well, if the problem is that stars are always stopped, what can Matthew have meant by saying the star stopped? And I thought retrograde motion, because of course stars do stop, planets do, in their movement through the field of fixed stars. They stop, they even reverse course. And that's how I think retrograde motion explains what the star stopping was.
So did Jupiter do that? Let's have a look. I'll animate Jupiter and let it drop a tail. And there you see it. Sure enough, Jupiter comes to a full stop and reverses course over the little town of Bethlehem. But I want to show you another screen that's more fun because I can throw dates with it. Now what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to let Jupiter fly through the field of fixed stars, and it's going to throw off dates so we can tell when these events are happening. The first one there, I know it's small, I'll read it for you. It says 10:30 of 2 BC. Now let's fly Jupiter. You see it moving through the fixed stars. That says 11:25 of 2 BC, and it's slowing up. It's going to stop right about here, reverse course. The date when it stops over the little town of Bethlehem, 12:25 of 2 BC. Does that date sound familiar? Well, Mr. Larson, you mean they went down there on Christmas? Well, it turns out that's true. Am I saying that Jesus was born on 12:25? No, I'm not saying that at all. Absolutely. In fact, I don't think anyone thinks that. No, what I'm saying is that is quite possibly the date of the first Christmas. Did it have any meaning to them? No, it had no meaning. The date had no meaning to them because they didn't even use our calendar system. I mean, but it does have meaning to us. It could well be assigned to us. Let me give you the chronology now. In September of 3 BC, Jupiter crowns Regulus in Leo. Up rises Virgo, clothed in the sun. New moon, birth at her feet, Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year. 9 months later, the biggest planet goes together with the brightest planet to make the brightest star anyone alive had ever seen. Where? Right over Jerusalem as it sets. The Magi ride. They get there sometime around November. They go to Herod and they say, we've seen the star. Where's the baby king? Herod says, Bethlehem. So they're leaving the gates of Jerusalem to go to Bethlehem, 5-mile trek. And they look up, and there's the star. There's Jupiter, right over this little town of Bethlehem. One of the guys, who's the guy who does the math for the group, he's going, wait. It's in full retrograde. It stopped right over the little town of Bethlehem. They ride down to Bethlehem in 1225, 2 BC. We know that's the date because that's when the star stopped. They're carrying gifts, remember? Frankincense, gold, and myrrh. They find the baby boy. Is he living in a manger? No. He's moved. He's in a house now. He's described in Greek as a paidion. He's a toddler. They find the baby boy, and they present these fabulous gifts to him on what turns out to be the first Christmas, 1225 of 2 BC. And now I've shared with you the Star of Bethlehem, but now I'm going to reveal something to you. It turns out in my studies, I find that the Star of Bethlehem is the beginning of what I think of as a celestial poem that ends at Christ's death. And to show you the full poem, I've got to take you to the day of the cross. I'm going to talk to you about Pentecost, but first I kind of have to give you some background so you'll understand. Jesus was killed at Passover. The next Jewish holiday is a feast. It's called the Feast of Pentecost. It's called Pentecost because it comes 50 days after Passover, so it's Pentecost. Now, Pentecost is a festival, and Jews who could afford to travel came from all the surrounding nations, came back to Jerusalem for this festival, so a lot of out-of-towners in town. Let's do the chronology of Christ's death. Remember, he dies on Passover, he's buried, he rises again. Bible says that he then appears to people on earth, stays around for 40 days. So he almost makes it to Pentecost, doesn't he? Then he leaves, and he gives instructions, and he says, stay here until you receive power from on high. So they do. The disciples stay in one place, and they're all gathered together, and Pentecost comes, and the weirdest things start happening. Something like a sound of rushing wind happens in the room where they are. Something like fire dances over their heads, and suddenly the disciples begin to speak in foreign languages, other tongues. People who are in town for the Pentecost feast hear the commotion. The crowd starts to gather, and these out-of-towners are hearing their own languages being spoken by a bunch of Galilean fishermen. It gets crazy. The crowd gets big enough that there are hecklers in the back, and one of the hecklers shouts out, says, "Oh, they're just drunk." Peter stands up and says, "They're not drunk. It's only 9 in the morning." Now, I lecture to a lot of college students, and I'm wondering, this is persuasive? So the next thing he does, don't try on your own. What he does next is crazy. He's got a huge crowd, and it's kind of an unruly crowd. He's got hecklers and stuff. And so Peter stands up, and he starts quoting an ancient prophet. This is what he says. He quotes Joel. He says, "I will show wonders in the heaven above and signs on the earth below. Blood," well, there's been a crucifixion. "Fire," something like fire danced over the disciples' heads. "And billows of smoke, and the sun will be turned to darkness." I think Joel saw a vision of something like smoke that blotted out the sun. "The sun will be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood." The moon turned to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord. "And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." And then he shouts at them. He says, "Men of Israel, listen to this. Jesus of Nazareth was a man accredited by God to you by miracles, wonders, and signs, which God did among you through him, as you yourselves know." Now, let me tell you why I put italics there. That's a very interesting argument. Let me paraphrase what just happened. Got a rowdy crowd out here. Peter stands up, and he says basically this: Joel predicted a bunch of stuff, and you've seen it. Now, you don't make that argument, especially to a rowdy crowd, unless they've seen the stuff. And one of the things they are said to have seen was a blood moon. Y'all know what a blood moon is? I thought that was weird. I thought that was just weird prophet talk. I don't know. Have you ever read and you see something in Scripture and that strikes you as so strange, like the moon would be turned to blood? You say, "Oh, okay." It just sounds like prophet talk, and I didn't know what it meant. But it turned out I was very wrong. That's a technical term. It's an ancient technical term, and it has a specific meaning. It means a lunar eclipse. Why do they call those blood moons? Because when a moon goes into eclipse, it goes into Earth's shadow. And so it gets no direct illumination from the sun. Instead, the only light that hits the moon under those conditions is refracted through the Earth's atmosphere, and it's red-shifted. Same thing, the similar phenomenon makes our sunsets red sometimes. So when the light comes through our atmosphere and it's red-shifted, it illuminates the moon, which becomes a dull red color. Have you ever seen one of those? Yeah, pretty spectacular, aren't they? It can be. Well, here's the gist of what we've just seen. Peter says that Joel said that there's a blood moon, and you've seen it. So there was an eclipse. Interesting. Now we need to date Christ's execution. The reason we have to do that is otherwise we won't know to look at the sky. We need to know what day we should study the sky to see the end of this poem that I'm showing you. So we have clues. Incidentally, let me make another pitch for my website here, BethlehemStar.net. The reason I'm pitching it again right here, there's a whole lot of really fascinating stuff on the website about this issue, the dating of Christ's execution. First, we know it was Preparation Day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. Okay, some of you may not know what Preparation Day means. Jews of this time, if they were observant Jews, could not work on the Sabbath, which was Saturday. They couldn't cook, couldn't wash clothes. So if they wanted to eat, they had to prepare it on Friday, and so Friday came to be called Preparation Day. So all four Gospels say that Jesus was killed on a Friday. Next clue. It was just before the Passover feast. Now, that's super useful, because we know when Passover is. We find from Leviticus, the Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. That's the Jewish lunar month of Nisan. The Jewish calendar is not a solar calendar like the one we use. So, those three clues taken together are extremely powerful. And let me explain why. Because their lunar calendar works like our solar calendar in some ways, and this is one of them. Think about your birthday. It's always on the same day of the month, right? Is it always on the same day of the week? No, because in a solar calendar and in the lunar calendar, days of the month can float through the days of the week. Our calendars are alike in that. But that's a clue. It's a huge clue, because now you can see Jesus must have been killed in a year when Nisan 14 happened to fall on a Friday. Can you see that? Okay, that really narrows things down. Let's get some more clues up there. Jesus himself was about 30 years old when he began his ministry. John recounts 3 Passovers during Christ's ministry. And we know he was taken before Pilate. And we know when Pilate sat, because Tacitus, the Roman historian, records it, 26 to 36 AD. So all these things taken together, plus more stuff on the website, come to one conclusion. Only April 3 of 33 AD seems to fit all the lines of evidence. This is the day of the cross.
Isaiah says the Messiah was beaten so severely he was hardly recognizable as human. And in that state, they put him on the cross at 9 a.m. He only lasted about 6 hours. But while he was on the cross, all hell broke loose. There were earthquakes, big earthquakes, big enough to bust boulders, because the New Testament tells us that. The sky gets dark at noon. Joel, in his vision of this event, seems to describe billowing clouds of smoke that obscured the sun. Tombs get shaken open. There's a veil in the Holy of Holies in the temple at Jerusalem. It separates the deepest part of the sanctuary from all the people who come to church, synagogue. That was ripped in half from top to bottom, symbolizing ordinary folks having direct access to the Holy of Holies, to God himself, because Messiah's sacrifice made it possible. They had to get him down off the cross before sundown. They had to do that, because otherwise he would defile the Passover. So they got him down. But the signs didn't stop. When the moon rose that evening, it was a blood moon, a lunar eclipse, which probably scared everybody there to death. I mean, I can really honestly think, having lived through all of those events and then seeing the blood moon, being scared spitless.
When the moon rises, it's already an eclipse. It's a blood moon. Now, I don't know what the Roman soldiers said when they saw that, but don't you know they were freaked out? I mean, seriously. After all these events during the day, and then the moon comes up and it's a blood moon, they're probably thinking, oh man, wrong side of this one. But there's more, and I want you to see it all. To show you what else there is, I need to take you back to Scripture. Because I want to get some data from Mark. I'm jumping around in the book because all I want is the time of day. It was the third hour when they crucified him, Mark tells us, and Mark counts from 6. So he's telling us he went on the cross at 9 a.m. At the 6th hour, which is noon, darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? And with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. Now, nobody wore wristwatches, but Jesus died at about 3. Let's go back to the sky. Now, can you see, if the moon rises in eclipse, that eclipse has to have begun beneath the horizon? It was already an eclipse? Okay. Well, of course, they couldn't look beneath the horizon, but we can. We have software. So I'm now taking you beneath the horizon. It's 2 p.m. Jesus is on the cross, and he's still alive. When I animate the sky, I don't think you're going to be surprised at what you see. As Jesus expires on the cross, the moon goes into eclipse. But there's more. To show you what else there is, I needed to remind you of the skies of Jesus' birth or perhaps conception. Magnificent imagery. Jupiter crowning Regulus, in Leo, uprises Virgo, the Virgin clothed in the sun, new moon, Rosh Hashanah, spectacular. And now we turn to the sky of Christ's death and turn on the constellations. And you see the moon has returned to the foot of Virgo. But now it's a full moon, a life fully lived, blotted out in blood.
I remember the night when I found the eclipse at Christ's crucifixion. I remember it because of what was happening to me. When I found that the moon was back at the foot of the Virgin, and then when I further found that the moon went into eclipse at the moment my Savior expired on the cross. And I remember exactly what I said. I don't think I could ever forget it. I looked up at the sky and I said, my God, what did you do? Because this is poetry of terrible beauty that showed me a side of God that I'd not seen. It showed me a God that would write poetry to record both the coming and the passing of my Messiah. And then he let me find it.
So what does this mean? What does this mean? You know, human beings have a characteristic response when they see a sign. They draw near to learn the fuller message. That's what Moses did when he saw the bush that burned but wasn't consumed by the flames. He drew near to learn the fuller message. It's what the Magi did when they saw the symbolism in the sky. They rode for Jerusalem to learn the fuller message. So what does this mean? Well, one thing it means is you can press the scriptures extremely hard and they hold up. But it means more than that. I believe it means Messiah has come. Our Messiah was announced in the sky. It's possible for us to have reconciliation with the perfect God because of Messiah's sacrifice. We just have to accept that.
It might mean even more than that. Because if we found the star and a reasonable person could conclude that we have, well, then the star was part of the natural order. The solar system is like a great clock. It's mathematically precise. We know exactly what it looked like thousands of years ago. And if the star was a part of that great clockwork solar system and universe, that means it was a clockwork star. And that to me is almost overwhelming, because that means that from the very moment that God flung the universe into existence, he had to know exactly when he would enter the human race as a man and when Messiah would expire on the cross, because he marched in the stars from before time.